to make it more in line with Allah Azza wa Jalla. And this is even a question that the Sahaba had. So there was one Sahaba, his name was Harith, radiyallahu anhu. And the Prophet ﷺ, he was someone who was very, very outgoing with the Sahaba. He didn't talk very much, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, but he would always make sure his Sahaba felt loved. He felt that they felt like he, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, cared about them. So Harith radiallahu anhu was there, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam asked him, how have you woken up this morning? Right, this is a riwayah in Tabarani. He asked him, how have you woken this morning? Like, how are you doing, Harith? How's everything going? And Harith, he says that I woke up as a true believer. So naturally, the Prophet ﷺ, he's there. He wants to, have some conversation with his companion. Because companions were, again, his students. But they're also friends, right? So the Prophet ﷺ continues the conversation. He says, okay, you woke up as a true believer. So what's the reality of your iman? This belief that you have, this connection to Allah Azza wa Jal that you have, this belief in the unseen that you have, what's the reality of it? What does it actually look like? Like, how's it doing? Is that belief strong? Is it weak? Is it moderate? How's it going? So Harith, it's a deep question, right? Something like a simple question, we might think, how is the reality of your iman? And we could say, alhamdulillah, I'm a Muslim, I'm blessed to be Muslim, which is true. But Harith, he says that this dunya is something that I become disillusioned by. Death is something that is always on my mind. It's as if I can see the throne of Allah Azza wa Jalla. It's as if I can see the people enjoying the beauties of Jannah. Because this belief that I have is so strong within me that those aspects of the hereafter are always a part of me. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he then says that is the reality of what Iman can do to one of us, can do to each and every one of us. So be steadfast with that belief, have istiqamah in that belief, and continue down that path that you are on. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in regards to the dunya, اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو. That know this dunya is a place for play, is a place for fun. وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد. And their beauty spread throughout this dunya. It is a place where people compete with one another. People are constantly fighting to get more and more and more. But reality is a place to play, a place for each and every one of us to strive to get close to Allah. That the reality of the dunya may be something as lowly as that, but the point of it and our purpose for being here is to reach the highest level of Jannah in the Akhirah. And what's so interesting about this word, anyone know what it means? We all hear it all the time. We associate it with the worldly, this whole worldly world that Allah Azza wa Jalla created. But does anyone know where the root letters they come from? Yes, exactly. Right? So, I'm sorry? Yes, from Adna, exactly, right? So the word, the huruf asliya, the root words in Arabic, the general structure of the language is that you have three letters, and these letters, when you combine them, they mean different things, and you can, change them into different forms, things like that. So the dunya, what it literally means, what the root of the word literally means, is something that is lowly, something that is baseless, something that is as low as can be. Because that's the reality of this dunya. That it's something that's as low as can be, and our goal and our purpose for being here is to live within that so that we can reach the highest maqam, the highest stature in Jannah, inshallah. So when it comes to living in the dunya, when it comes to being Muslims in the dunya, striving and being people who work to improve our soul, improve our nafs, is very important. The ulama mention that tazkiyatul nafs, purification of the soul, striving, having mujahada in what we do, striving to purify our soul, striving to become better Muslims, that consistent striving, that istiqamah in that path of struggle through the dunya is what ultimately will lead us to Jannah in the Akhirah. So what is the soul? What is it? Why is it so vital? What is it made up of? Why is it something that Allah Azza wa Jal highlights throughout the Quran? Because to have a healthy soul, to have a healthy nafs that is not brought in, that is not tempted, that is not succumbed to the desires of the dunya, it is that soul, it is that person that can progress through the dunya and reach the highest stature that we are speaking of. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says in authentic hadith, this hadith is in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he mentions it in his Arba'in Nawawi as well. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says, Inna fil jasadi mudghatan idha salahat salaha al jasadu kullu. That within the body, there is a morsel of flesh, a mudgha, an aspect of flesh, and if it is whole, all of the body is whole. The whole body is complete, the whole body is consistent. وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. But if that morsel, that mudgha in the body is corrupt, if it is tainted, أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبِ. Then it becomes, فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. Then the whole body becomes corrupt. And that morsel, that part of the body, أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبِ. That part of the body is the qalb, the heart. It is the heart. When the ulama speak about tazkiyatun nafs, purifying the soul, preparing the soul for the aspects of the barzakh, the aspects of the akhirah, in the day of judgment, making sure we're ready for all of that, the ulama often mention 3 different elements of the human being that go beyond the physical realm. Of course, we as Muslims, we believe in the concept of the ghaib, the unseen, a world that is closed off from us, that Allah Azza wa Jal has full knowledge of. And it is within these aspects of the ghaib that the purification of the soul happens. All 3 of these aspects that we'll speak about, these 3 things are all highlighted throughout the Quran and the Sunnah. And Imam Ghazali rahimahullah in his Ihya Ulumuddin, which is his book on his book on spirituality, his book on purifying the soul, Imam Ghazali highlights these 3 things. That to purify these 3 things, they're all interconnected. To purify them is to purify the soul, to purify the nafs, to get closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. The first of these things is the ruh. The ruh, as we spoke about in the beginning. It is the soul in which Allah Azza wa Jal has full knowledge of. It is something that is innately pure. The ruh of the insan is something pure that only Allah Azza wa Jal truly knows. But it is a soul that is there, open to the obedience of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's part of the human being, it cannot be corrupted, it is pure, and the fitrah, the natural disposition of the insan, of the human being, cannot be changed through the ruh, because the ruh in its nature is pure. And then we have the qalb, that morsel that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about. The qalb, the ulama teach us, is where that aspect of the ruh resides. That ruh, that pure aspect of the human being that is constantly there, wishing to be obedient to Allah Azza wa Jal, resides within the qalb. And as the Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith, if the qalb is pure, if the qalb is good, then the rest of the body is good, everything is good to go. You're chilling. But if the qalb is pure, the qalb is corrupt, then the rest of the body ends up becoming suppressed, and it ends up becoming corrupt. And that's where that 3rd aspect comes in, the nafs. Because the ruh resides within the qalb, and the qalb, when it is covered and the nafs goes above and beyond, succumbing to temptations, then the qalb is tainted, the ruh is tainted, is covered up, and that desire for obedience does not come naturally to each and every one of us. So the nafs is that part of the human being that calls a person towards satisfying their temptations. Eating more and more food. Food is a beautiful thing. Allah Azza wa Jal created it to sustain us. But food can also be something, as Imam Ghazali points out in his Ihya, that it can be something that leads to even more sin. When we stuff ourselves with food, when we continue to eat food, when we know we shouldn't. When it comes to other aspects, like our wealth. Our wealth, obviously, of course, just like food, it's something that we need to live. We utilize it to provide for our families. We utilize it to provide for our children. We utilize it to benefit ourselves, to pay for our health, to make sure we are healthy. All of these things. But there's excess and danger in that as well. And there's temptation in that as well, of course, as we all know. And these 3 aspects, the ruh, the qalb, and the nafs, understanding these 3 things holistically is where we can learn and strive and understand how to purify the nafs. To get that nafs, the soul, on that path towards ita'ah, that path towards obedience in Allah Azza wa Jalla. One of my favorite examples of how to understand how these 3 things work, because I'm a person I'm honestly a visual learner. So things like, slides, things like just visual cues always help me learn. So even for things, complicated things like this, that may seem a bit confusing, breaking it down into, a mithal, an example, always helps me understand. So inshallah, I hope that through this example, each and every one of us here will get a better understanding of what these three things look like. So imagine, right? I need everyone to open their mind right now and just imagine that you have a lantern in front of you. What is it? Lantern, right? You guys, everyone knows what a lantern is, right? I know, mashallah, we have, flashlights, phones, all that stuff. But lanterns, those things that you hold. You got the light in between it. You got the light in the middle of it, sorry. That lantern, of course, has a source of light. And around that source of light is what? Glass, right? You got something covering the lamp. So if that glass is covered then, if it's all misty, if there's a bunch of dirt on it, you haven't cleaned that glass in a while, what happens? The light's dim, right? If it gets more and more covered, more and more stuff covers it, what happens to the light then? It gets more dim, more and more dirt gets on that glass, and you get more and more of it until at some point when the whole glass is fully covered, that light inside can't come out now. It's hidden within all the rust, all the dirt, all that yucky stuff, right? So now imagine if that lantern, if that glass is fully clean, if that glass is pure, then that light will emerge out for everyone to see. And anything that light touches will be visible to us, and we can take it in, our eyes can take it in. But if that casing becomes dark, then that light can never come out, as we said. So to understand this whole mithal, to understand the example of the ruh, the qalb, and the nafs, these three things in play, imagine that lantern, that source of light, is the ruh. It's hidden within that whole lantern case, the qalb. It resides there, waiting to be free. The qalb is pure, that lantern is clean, the glass is clean. So now the ruh, the light of the ruh can come out, and anything that comes in, anything the light touches can come in for us to be able to view. But you succumb to your desires. You look at something that you shouldn't. You listen to something that you shouldn't. And slowly, each of those things becomes a speck on that glass. More and more specks, one after the other, 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 until what happens to the lantern? It's fully covered. That pure ruh that's inside, that pure light that's inside is itching to get out. It's still bright, it's still shining. But because you succumb to the temptations of the nafs over and over again, the whole nafs took over. It became drenched within the qalb, and now that casing becomes dark. It becomes dim. It becomes completely covered. So no matter how much light may be in there, the light cannot penetrate out, because one by one we let those desires in over and over and over and over again, and that light, despite it being there, has nowhere to go. It has no means of reaching out. It has no means of making things shine. So to understand how to be someone who can get closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, how to be someone who can feel more in tune with their Islam, we have to continually strive every single day, throughout our lives, throughout our busy obligations, to be people who can continue to clean that case on the outside, continue to clean that glass. You obviously can't do everything all at once, but slowly and slowly you add some more aspects of ibadah into your routine. An extra, few ayahs of Quran a day, maybe 2 rak'ahs before you go to sleep, those little things. And over and over and over again, one of those specks get removed, it gets replaced, and it gets cleaned. It gets cleaned and cleaned and cleaned and cleaned until what happens to that lantern, guys? It's shining and it's bright. And that's the objective that we're looking for. Because when we strive, when we have mujahada of our nafs, that's how we get to the point where the whole lantern is shining bright again. Not going to extremes, because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught us to be balanced, but striving to fight our desires in little ways every single day. And this is something that the Sahaba always strove to do. And one thing the Sahaba would always do is they would ask the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, we want to strive to clear our nafs, we want to strive to clean our qalb, to make sure that qalb is clean so that the light can come out. So tell us, Ya Rasulullah, what the akhirah is like. What's the afterlife like, right? We always talk about Jannah, we always talk about Jahannam, but how often do we actually think about these things, right? When we think of Jannah, we imagine generally, right? It's like a place of eternal peace, of eternal salvation, all that stuff, which is true. There's no question about that. But one thing that we often neglect is what Jannah like. What does it actually look like? Because we can imagine maybe something that feels peaceful, that aspects that allow us to think of that serenity. But the qualities, intricate aspects of Jannah are things that we often don't think about. But the Sahaba would ask about these things so that when they get a picture of what Jannah is like, although Jannah is beyond our imagination, but getting an idea of what it's like, then it gives you that motivation, that strength to be able to strive for it. Yeah, and there are so many examples like that in the dunya, right? Like for those of us who are working, right, which inshallah is most of us here. I mean, with the job market nowadays, wallahu a'lam, but inshallah most of us here, right? If you have like a goal to reach at the end of the year, and that goal comes with a salary increase, what's every single person here going to do? They're going to strive and work to get to that goal so they can get that extra boost in their salary, right? It's a natural conclusion that each and every one of us would get to. So the Sahaba knew that this dunya is la'ibu wa lahu, that the ultimate reality of the dunya is there are important things like our jobs, like our families, no question. But ultimately, all these things around us are distractions for us, preventing us and distracting us from remembering the akhirah. So the Sahaba would ask about the akhirah. Ya Rasulullah, tell us what Jannah is like, so that we can have a visual of some level in our mind, so that way we can strive and work towards it and get to that outcome. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when the Sahaba asked him about what Jannah was like, they say, Ya Rasulullah, tell us about Jannah. Tell us about Jannah and tell us what it looks like. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says that a single brick of the buildings in Jannah, because Jannah will have palaces of gold, things like that. So a single brick of the buildings of Jannah will be gold. Gold, made of gold, of the most beautiful gold that you can possibly imagine. And it will have silver and cement that smells like musk. That smells like musk, right? And not that poor, cheap bakhur that all of us in this room have smelled, but that nice, beautiful musk that you just can't get enough of. And then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says the pebbles in Jannah, they'll be like pearls, glistening and sparkling. And there'll be rubies that are glistening and sparkling. And the grass will be shining like saffron, smelling amazing, all of these beautiful qualities. And whoever enters Jannah, whoever enters this paradise, shall enjoy these luxuries of gold, of silver, of peace, of salvation, and never experience any difficulty. Living there forever, getting anything and everything they could possibly imagine for all of eternity. For all of eternity without any end in sight. And when the Sahaba would ask the Prophet about all these things, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks about these things too. But He give all these deep, intricate examples so that the Sahaba could genuinely understand what it is they're working for. Because in the dunya, when we strive for a better salary, when we strive for that Ivy League school, when we strive for that job, we always have a visual in our mind of how to get there, of what it's going to look like, of what it's going to feel like. But when it comes to Jannah, we have to think of it as this place of serenity, as we said, which is true. But we often don't attach any visuals to it. And by attaching these visuals, like the Sahaba had, we can truly visualize what our place in Jannah could truly look like. Palaces of gold, roads of silver, place that smells amazing, as much peace and salvation as one could wish for. That's what we are striving for. That's what the Sahaba would always be asking about. Now to be someone, now we talked about the ruh, nafs, and the qalb. How do we work now to continue to move those spots, to move those black spots in our qalb? Because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam tells us, Kullu bani Adam khata, that every single human being is in error. Every single human being, in their nature, they make mistakes, they slip, they fall. That's in our nature. And Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفٌ, that a human being was created weak. That's just how we are. It's in our nature. So to be people who clean that qalb consistently requires istiqamah, requires consistency. And I want to highlight this point, and inshallah I'll highlight this point and we'll close with this inshallah, that as the month of Ramadan is approaching, naturally during the sacred month, each and every one of us push ourselves to reach heights that we never have before, right? That if there are things that we do, even if they're not too terrible, we naturally strive to read more Quran, to watch less TV, to watch less movies, to be better Muslims in any way that we can, praying Taraweeh, of course fasting throughout the day, all these things, because the month of Ramadan, it's the time to get close to Allah Azza wa Jal in a way that we can't in any other point of the year. But the Sahaba would always prep for Ramadan, get into that Ramadan mindset as far as 2-3 months before Ramadan, months before Ramadan. Because they understood that to get into that mindset, to slowly build themselves up to that point of Ramadan, that when the month of Ramadan then approaches, then you can reach that next level that you never have before. How many of us, and I'm no exception to this, how many of us go into Ramadan, like preparing for Ramadan, without really thinking twice about it? You know, we just do our normal routine, Ramadan comes, and then we get going. But imagine now, if we have that mindset of getting ready for Ramadan, and we start prepping for it, working towards it, being consistent in our lives as the month approaches. And then when we start Ramadan, well, all of those around us are getting into their Quran routines, are getting into praying extra salahs, are getting into that stage of mujahadatul nafs, striving against their nafs, pushing away those things that are desirous to them. While all those people are just getting started, because we had that mindset before the month of Ramadan, and we were striving to build ourselves before the month of Ramadan, we start the month with a massive head start. That's our goal. So the key thing to be people of consistency, to be people who can get to that level is to be consistent. Istaqim, walan tuhsu. To be consistent even though we will falter, even though we may slip. The Prophet ﷺ says, and for those of us who are here at Jum'ah, alhamdulillah, we mentioned this during the khutbah as well. The Prophet ﷺ says that the most beloved deeds to Allah Azza wa Jal, أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ. That the most beloved deeds in the eyes of Allah Azza wa Jal is not praying the whole night, is not spending your whole day reading Quran, is not spending all your wealth in sadaqah, is not doing all these things that we associate with righteousness. But أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ. That the most beloved deeds to Allah Azza wa Jal are deeds that are done consistently, repeatedly, over and over again, even if they are small. وَإِنْ قَلَّ. Even if they're small. So inshallah, to close, I ask each and every one of us to open our mind and to think and reflect and ponder, right? What's something that we can do now? We have about 3 weeks until the month of Ramadan, inshallah. May Allah Azza wa Jal allow us to get there. We have a few short weeks till the month of Ramadan approaches. But our advice to myself, first and foremost, is to find something that we can do to be consistent in. أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ. Something that's not big, because human beings are naturally created deficient, they are naturally created weak. We slip, we falter. Something super simple that we can be consistent on, that we can do repeatedly over and over again, that we can push ourselves to do, even if it's small, so that when the month of Ramadan starts, we're not starting from zero. That we built a base of consistency, of istiqamah, and something extra, so that when that month starts, we can take that little bit that we did consistently within the 3 weeks that we have now, and push it forward to the next level. And it is through this consistency and through this istiqamah that we become people who continue to clean that lantern. That darkness that erodes, that covers the qalb, slowly and slowly with this consistency, whether it's a page of Quran a day, 2 rak'ahs before we sleep, small things like that, but done repeatedly, we continue to remove those dots, remove those nuqtas, remove those specks in our qalb, so that that light of the ruh, that ruh calling to the obedience of Allah Azza wa Jal, can shine out, and becoming obedient to Allah Azza wa Jal becomes easier. Because through that consistency, through that dedication, as we strive to get closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, naturally as a consequence of that, our level of ease in doing aspects of ibadah to Allah Azza wa Jal becomes easier as well. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us people of istiqamah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us people who can be consistent up until the month of Ramadan. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to allow us to reach the month of Ramadan and allow us to reach heights during this month that we never have before. أقول قولي هذا وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, if anyone has any questions, inshallah, I can do my best to inshallah answer it. But if no one has any questions, inshallah, then we can close here, inshallah.
You mentioned that the lantern,
Yes.
you said that the heart is the glass, the book is the light.
Yes.
What is the nafs?
The nafs are those things that covers the heart. You engage in things that tempt you. The nafs naturally, that's where the shaitan comes in, right? We always hear about waswasa to shaitan. So that aspect of the nafs, that glass is what the shaitan tries to go after. He tries to cover up the qalb through the nafs. So the ruh is naturally, it's pure. He can't touch that. Shaitan can't touch that. But he tries to tempt us to engage in our desires so that the qalb gets more and more covered. And the nafs gets, the qalb, gets more and more covered. And worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal, doing aspects of obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal becomes more and more difficult as a consequence of that.
Film that covers the glass nafs.
Yes. Yeah. That the cover is the qalb, but the nafs are those things that cover that glass. Does that make sense, brother? Alhamdulillah. Yes. Amar bisu. I'm sorry?
How do you define those three? This example that you gave.
So the nafs, there are different aspects of the nafs, as you were saying, brother, right? So as that glass becomes cleaner and cleaner, the nafs is something that always calls us to temptation. But if you work and you have that constant mujahada, you have that consistent istiqamah in becoming closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, eventually you reach a state where the nafs is nafsul mutma'inna, where the nafs is naturally a lot more pure. That call to desire is always a part of the nafs, but because you consistently strived over and over again to purify the nafs, to purify the qalb, the nafs is in such a manner where when you feel that waswasa from shaitan, it's very, very easy to push it away. And Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhal, it's at the end of the surah. Yeah, what's the ayah, sorry? Yes, Ya ayyuhat, say it again, sorry, brother, sorry. Ya nafs al-mutma'inna irji'i ila rabbik. Yeah, that the soul that is at peace, that has that sense of mutma'inna, it returns to their Lord. Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. It returns to their Lord well pleased, like pleasured and well pleased. Because the nafs cases that heart, the qalb is cased, and that nafs is so clean, so pure, that even though you face that temptation, because you've striven to clean that glass, clean the qalb, that the nafs itself, it's easier to fight off. It's easier to when you get temptations for things, wealth, desires, whatever it may be, because you've striven so hard. The nafs is in such a case where it's just in line with Allah Azza wa Jal as a default. Does that make sense, brother?
I think there's a clear correspondence between the example that you gave.
Yes.
So the simile is not.
Which aspect?
Yeah, I think of what you're saying. The nafs, you're basically saying that nafs is that film, that desire. Nafs is desire. But then now we're saying, okay, that's,
And the nafs is part of the human being as well, but that nafs is what wants those aspects of our desires. So, for example, I'll give you another example, brother. When you're eating food, right? As human beings, we don't need as much food as we generally think we do. We can just suffice with maybe 1 or 2 meals a day, and that's it. But naturally, what always happens, brother? When you eat food, you always want seconds, you always want more, right? It's a natural feeling. So that desire for more food, that's what the nafs is. It's always calling for more. It's always calling for more. And as that happens over and over and over again, the heart gets more and more covered. Exactly. But when you strive against that nafs, when you strive to push things away, it gets cleaner. It gets like the nafs itself gets more pure, and then the casing around the heart continues to stay clean.
so when you strive for that sense, that belief, that mindset that comes over, or perhaps, that makes you say, hey, let me stop being negative.
Yeah.
Isn't that the ruh?
But the ruh is within that. It's pure within that. So the ruh and the nafs are all, the ruh and the nafs are on opposite sides, and they're both trying to influence the qalb, which is that glass. So the nafs is there. It's part of the human being as well. It's calling to all these desires. The ruh is there. It's calling to Allah Azza wa Jal. And you got the qalb like right in the middle of that casing that's trying to stay clean so that the light of the ruh can come out.
So it's think of like the guilt that you feel
Yeah.
done wrong, you ate too much, feeling that you get.
Mhm.
That's the rule, right?
That's an aspect of it, yeah. Like when you're in a gathering and you feel that deep connection to Allah Azza wa Jal, like during Taraweeh, right? You always see people, like they're praying Taraweeh, they might not understand anything, but you always hear these stories all the time where, that person's just crying, just listening to the Quran. They have no clue what's being said. They have no clue about anything that's going on, but they feel that deep connection to Allah Azza wa Jal because some of that light is coming out, and that obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal, that immense weight of revelation is entering them just like that.
There's conscience.
Mhm.
Conscience. There it's called Amir.
Mhm.
That's cool.
Wallahu alam. I can look into that more, inshallah, but off the top of my head, wallahu alam.
It's that sense that you get, the right or wrong.
Yeah. The fitra, yeah.
People that have no conscience and have no belief, of course,
Mhm.
it's the same. These are just completely resign themselves to the next.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Does anyone else have any questions, inshallah? Inshallah, we'll close with that, inshallah. Barakallahu feek. Jazakumullah khair for everyone who came, inshallah. It was a pleasure being with you guys, inshallah. I look forward to, inshallah, seeing all of you guys in the future, inshallah. Barakallahu feek. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You didn't mention that. This is the third.
Yes. Oh, that was a joke, brother. Yes. Yeah.
Of course,
Like,
third
how are you
would
doing?
be the Maqdis, right?
Of course, for masjids, yes. Yeah. Of course.
My brother's grandson. Oh, mashallah. So your nephew, mashallah.
Look, we're going to have like 18 wind chill Sunday
Yeah.
morning, 15 wind chill.
I'll see that. That's cold.
So that maybe.
Yeah.
Now, right now,